מלך העולם שהכל יהיה בדברו. Bruchim Abayim, Morai Rabotai. We are continuing on Mesechet Avodah Zarah, and we are on the bottom of Nun Bet, Amud Bet, starting the Mishnah, fourth line from the start of the wide lines. Today's Amud is being learned. The Schud Refuah Shalema for Meir ben Tova and Sarah Rachel bat Nora, and the Hatzlacha of Yigal ben Devorah. Today's Amud is also being learned and dedicated for Refuah Shalema of Rachel Simcha bat Nahid, that should have full recovery. Amen. So we're starting a new Mishnah, Ovet Kochavim Mebatel Avodat Kochavim Shelo V'Shel Chavero. We spoke about the concepts of bitul of a goy versus a Jew when they decide to nullify their Avodah Zarah. So says the Mishnah, a goy could do that. A goy could decide that no longer I want this Avodah Zarah to be a deity. I hereby denounce it from being my deity, my Avodah Zarah. But a Jew cannot do it. Now, how a goy could be mebatel is going to be the next Mishnah, what the process of bitul entails. But conceptually, a goy could do it, says the Mishnah. He could do his own Avodah Zarah. He could even do his friend's Avodah Zarah. He could denounce. So it says the Mishnah, and a Jew cannot nullify and denounce Avodat Kochavim of a goy. Says the Mishnah, a person that nullifies and denounces an Avodat Kochavim, mebatel meshamesheha. If you have a statue, a Avodah Zarah, and every Avodah Zarah has meshameshim, has sidekicks basically that go with it, that are used in the service of that Avodah Zarah. If you are mebatel, if you denounce the Avodah Zarah, all the Mishameshim automatically are denounced as well. They're no longer considered Tashmishei Avodah Zarah, and therefore hence they would become Mutar Behana'ah. But if you denounce the Tashmishei Avodah Zarah, the Mishameshei Avodah Zarah, the Avodah Zarah itself still stays in its Isur Hana'ah because still has not been denounced. So that's simple to understand. If you denounce the Ikar, the Tafel goes with it. Right? That is a tag-along. But if you denounce the tafel, if you denounce the mishameshim, the vessels that are used for Avodah Zarah, you have not denounced the Avodah Zarah itself, then hence that stays asur. Says the Gemara, Matnilah Rebbe le Shimon be or Bre. Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi was teaching Mishnayot to his son Rabbi Shimon. So he taught him this Mishnah that we just had. Ovet Kochavim mebatel avodat Kochavim shelo v'shel chavero. That the goy could denounce his own Avodah Zarah, and he could also denounce the Avodah Zarah of his friend. Amaleh Rabbi Shanita lanu bialdutecha. His son says, Rabbi, you taught us in your younger years something different. You changed. So it says the son to the father, Ovet Kochavim mebatel avodat Kochavim shelo v'shel Yisrael. When I was younger, when you were younger, when the first time you taught me this Mishnah, you mentioned that Ovet Kochavim could be denouncing his own Avodah Zarah. He could also be denouncing the Yid's Avodah Zarah. He could also nullify the Jewish person's Avodah Zarah as well. But now you're telling me Shel Chaverot. That means he could only denounce his Avodah Zarah and the Goy's Avodah Zarah, his friend who is a Goy, but not his friend who is a Yid, who is a Jew. Whereas when I was young, you taught us that a Goy even has within his power to nullify and denounce the Avodah Zarah of a Jew. So what happened over here? Right? It's a good question. The Yisrael mikame batara, and the Gemara asks, says, well, you could denounce the Avodah Zarah of a Jew. Since when that is the case? We learn that the Avodah Zarah of a Jew is not nullifiable. And we learned it from a pasuk, as we discussed last week. Ha'ish, in the 11 Arurim curses that the Torah mentions, one of them is a person that maintains an Avodah Zarah, and the pasuk reads, Arur ha'ish asher ya'aseh pesel u'masechat ha'avat Hashem b'aseh yedei charash v'sam basatir. And the Gemara learned, why do you have to say where he puts it, where he keeps it? It's completely irrelevant and not needed. So the Gemara said the pasuk is coming to tell you the remedy for it is none. You have to do genizah on it. You cannot fix it. There's no bitul for a Jewish Avodah Zarah. So says the Gemara, since when you have nullification for an Avodah Zarah of a Jew? We learned that you can't. Amar Rab Hillel b'rei Rab Valis, the son of Rab Valis, said, Lo nitzrecha sheyesh lo ba shutafut, that the case is only needed when a statue, Avodah Zarah, is owned b'shutfut, is owned in partnership. A Jew has part in it, a goy has part in it, and the question is, can the goy, who is a shutaf, who owns this in part, can he nullify his chelik and the chelik of the Jew, his friend? Beyalduto, when Rebbe was younger, my kasavar, ubeziknuto my kasavar. Gemara says, okay, I get it. I get Rab Hillel's chiluk over here. That he's saying that we're not talking about a goy that goes to his friend's house and he wants to nullify the Jewish-owned Avodah Zarah. No, that's not the case. We're talking about the case that the Jew and the goy own an Avodah Zarah together. And the question is if the goy could nullify 100% of this. Or can he only do his own chelik, his own part? That's the question. Well, says, okay, fine. Now, why Rebbe changed his mind? What is the mechanism of this bitul? And why would Rebbe, in his youth, believe that the goy can nullify the Jewish person's part in this Avodah Zarah? And when he got older, he changed his mind and said, no, the goy cannot touch and cannot denounce the part owned by the Jew. So says the Gemara, B'yalduto savar Yisrael adata de'ovet kochavim palach. 4 lines up. When he was younger, he thought that a Jew does not really do Avodah Zarah on his own. The reason that he is doing the Avodah Zarah is kind of like a tag-along with the goy. The goy believes in it, so, out of respect, whatever it is, he doesn't really believe in this Avodah Zarah as a deity, as a Eloah. He's not hold of it as any power, but he's doing it because he feels it's the wise thing to do because of the goy. So therefore, the entire avodah, the entire service of this piece of Avodah Zarah is because of the goy. So if the goy is the center of Avodah Zarah for this, and even the service of the Jew hinges on the goy's belief on this, so then the goy could denounce the whole thing, his chelik and the Jewish chelik as well. When Rebbe became older, he said, no, you actually do have Jews that believe in Avodah Zarah, unfortunately. And when he believes in Avodah Zarah, he has his own chelik. It's not that he is hinging and piggybacking on the belief system of the goy. No, he really believes in it. He has chosen this as a source of yirah and deity, and therefore he believes in it. The goy cannot touch that belief of the Jew. So the chelik of the Jew in Avodah Zarah remains untouched. The goy cannot nullify it. We are back to the pasuk of Vesam Basater, that the Avodah Zarah of a Jew has no fix. So says the Gemara. Ubeziknuto savar Israel adata denafsheh palach. Israel is doing the Avodah Zarah on his own free will and not because of the goy, and therefore ki mebatel ovet kochavim denafsheh. Therefore, the goy could only denounce his chelek of Avodah Zarah, but the chelek of Israel, the Israel lo batil. He cannot touch the chelek of the Jew. Now, ika dematni la hasefa. There are those who learn this chiluk of Rab Hillel on the sefa. In other words, remember, Rab Hillel came when the Gemara had a question, and Rab Hillel says, no problem. The chiluk is we're talking about a partnership in a statue. That's what he said, right? Talking about the statue of Avodah Zarah that is partly owned by a Jew, partly owned by a goy. So there are those who say, Rabbi Hillel did not say that on this question, he said it on the sefa of this Mishnah. What does the sefa say? Says the Gemara, Yisrael eno mebatel avodat kochavim shel ovet kochavim. The sefa of the Mishnah says a Jew cannot nullify and denounce the Avodah Zarah of a goy. So the Gemara says, wait a second, that has a big problem. What's the obvious problem with the last line of the Mishnah? The obvious problem is, since when I thought I had a havamina that a Jew should be able to denounce a goyish Avodah Zarah. He can't even denounce his own Avodah Zarah. Since when he could do his own? Says the Gemara, Amar Rab Hillel, Pshita, it's pashut that he shouldn't be able to denounce the goy's Avodah Zarah, and that's when Rab Hillel's chiluk comes to answer. Amar Rab Hillel brede Rabbi Valis lo nitzrecha sheyesh lo ba shutafut. We are talking about a case that the Jew himself has shutafut in this Avodah Zarah. V'kam hashmalan, and it's coming to teach us, Yisraelu delo mebatel leovet kochavim, aval ovet kochavim denafsheh mebatel. It's coming to teach you that the Jew cannot be mebatel, cannot denounce the part of the Ovet Kochavim, but the Ovet Kochavim could be mebatel his own part in the Avodah Zarah. Now, the chidush of this is, without getting too deep into concepts of birera, there is a shas concept across the Gemara of en birera yesh birera. That means, do we say when something is mixed and you want to apply a halacha to a partially to a part of it, can we say, well, in retrospect comes out that this would be applicable to that part? Berera means you're choosing parts. Like over here, a Jew and a goy bought a statue of Avodah Zarah together, right? So each one has statute of limitation, right? Pun intended. So you have the goy bought something, the Jew bought something, and they didn't say, well, the head is mine, the right foot is mine, the left hand is yours. It didn't work like that. They own all of this Avodah Zarah together. And you could say every molecule and atom of this statue is owned by two people. And therefore, I should not be able to nullify my part because there's a Jewish ownership. And even though that I'm a goy and I could nullify my own Avodah Zarah, but this Avodah Zarah maybe I can't nullify because every part of it is under the question of ownership by a Jew. Versus, you could say, well, in retrospect comes out that we assume that there's two parts in this, without having to identify which part is which, but there's half and half, or there's 20, whatever percentage it is. My chilek I could nullify. Because once I nullify it, comes out, berera, we say there is choosing between the mix like this, and part of it that I own is not nullified. That's it. So because these isurim are isurim derabanan, The again overly simplified way of saying it is yesh berera b'derabanan. In concepts that are rabbinic, we say yesh berera. Concepts that are deoraita, we stay out of it. We say en berera. So that would be the chidush of the Gemara over here. So says the Gemara.
But what ramifications would that have? I mean, obviously, it's still completely usher to a Jew because there's no way to nullify his section.
Well, no, it does make a difference, because if you have part of it that are mebutal, now having hana'ah from certain parts of this would be either safek, and again, the isur of hana'ah could be also derabanan, and therefore any safek that you have would actually help, right? And you'll also say brera in those things. So it definitely has ramifications, halachically speaking. So says the Gemara, third way of understanding the psak, the chiluk that Rabbi Hillel, the son of Rabbi, said is the matna abraita, that they say this limud of Rabbi Hillel on a braita, not on this Mishnah, but on a braita related to this Mishnah. Rabbi Shimon ben Menasya omer, avodat kochavim shel Yisrael en la betela olamit, that Avodah Zarah of a Jew does not have any nullification forever. Now, why do you have to say olamit? Why do you have to say forever? Just say Avodah Zarah shel Yisrael en la betela. Right? You don't have to say olamit. It's certainly coming to add something that I would have thought, and now it's teaching me that you should know that even in this case, it doesn't have a nullification. What is that case? Says the Gemara, my olamit, Amar Rabbi Hillel ben Vales, lo nitzrecha ela sheyesh lo lovet kochavim bashutafut. We're talking about even a case, is coming to add, even a case that a goy has shutafut in that statue, in that Avodah Zarah, even with all of that, Kamash Malan, the Israel Adata Denafshe Palach, is coming to teach you what we learned in the earlier on. Rebbe Beziknuto held that when a Jew decides to do Avodah Zarah, he's not doing it because of a goy. His decision to do Avodah Zarah is a freestanding decision, and therefore the goy who co-owns this statue cannot nullify and denounce the entirety of the Avodah Zarah. The chelek of the Jew stays asur, because that chelek is not nullifiable, since the Jew holds his own ground of believing in a deity of Avodah Zarah, and it's not that his belief is piggybacking on the belief of a goy. If it was piggybacking, then the goy could have nullified the Jewish chelek, the Jewish part of the Avodah Zarah also. And therefore this braita is teaching us, says Rabbi Hillel, that the Avodah Zarah of a Jew doesn't have bitul olamit. There's no case in the world that Avodah Zarah of a Jew will be nullifiable. Even in a case that you would think, well, he doesn't really believe in it. He bought it because his partner was buying, so he just, dropped some money in it. They bought it together. He may bow to it, but he really is doing it because of his politically correct. He's not really believing it. It doesn't work like that. A Jew that has Avodah Zarah, the maskara is, and that's what we learned earlier in the name of Rebbe in his later years, that Avodah Zarah of a Jew is a full Avodah Zarah, even if it's with partnership with the goy, and that chelek of the Jew is not denounceable, is not nullifiable.
What if he sold it to the non-Jew?
It's going to be the next Mishnah, right? Very appropriate. We made up before the shiur. Ketzad mebatela, right? How? Exactly timely. How do you get rid of Avodah Zarah? Right? How do we do this? So says the Mishnah, Kata rosh ozna. If you cut off a piece of this Avodah Zarah, you cut a piece of its ears, or you cut a piece of its nose, Rosh ozna, Rosh chotmah, the tip of the ear, the tip of the nose, Rosh etzba'ah, some of the fingers, Pichasa, that means you smashed it with a hand, you hammered it down. Even though Afalpi shelo chisra, even though that no piece came off. Imagine a Avodah Zarah that's made out of wood. And you took a hammer and you hammered the face. No piece came off, but you basically defaced it. Bitula. All of those things are considered bitul. All of those things are halachic ways of nullifying the Avodah Zarah. It's good. The Avodah Zarah, if the goy did any of these things, you could take the Avodah Zarah and run with it, right? And go sell it, and it's now usable. It's not asur behana'ah anymore. Now, rak befanea, if he spat on it, he shtin befana, he urinated in front of it. Gerarai, he dragged it in the mud and in a disgraceful manner. Zarak bayit atzoah, he smashed a piece of tzoah on it. He threw some excrement on it. Harezu ena betela. It's not batel. Those activities do not constitute a bitula, even though that is not kivud avayim, is not considered a respectful act, but it's not going to constitute bitul either. Now, there's machloket about what if you have some monetary benefit that you got out of this by the means of putting it as a guarantor. It's very disrespectful also. Mishkena or mechara, right? You sold it, or you put it as a mashkon, as a guarantor. Rebbe says that is considered bitul. Chachamim say it's not considered bitul. It's machloket Rebbe and Chachamim whether those two items of selling the Avodah Zarah or putting it as a mashkon constitutes a proper bitul. And now, of course, we're going to deal with who you're selling it to and so on and so forth. So says the Gemara, if you did not take any piece off by the case of smashing it and defacing it with a hammer without breaking any pieces, so it says the Gemara, if you didn't break any pieces, how did the bitul happen? Usually, for bitul, you have to take a piece off. You have to break the Avodah Zarah. Here, you didn't break it. So says the Gemara, so what? If you took a hammer and you smashed the toenails of the Avodah Zarah, so it still looks like Avodah Zarah, so you have some broken bones inside maybe. Like, well, it's a wooden Avodah Zarah. What do you want? You didn't break. So how did it become batel? By just smashing some pieces without breaking. It's a wooden Avodah Zarah, for instance. So how does that work as bitul? Every ounce of the Avodah Zarah is still there. So says the Gemara, no. You're doing this to his face. You're literally defacing the Avodah Zarah. And that is such a damage that is considered sufficient enough that this Avodah Zarah now is batil. It's not remedy. It doesn't have a remedy anymore. You completely smash the face of it. So the fact that no piece came off does not matter. Now you literally defaced the Avodah Zarah, and that is considered bitul. Says the Gemara, rak befara ishtin befara minahanimidi. How do you know that if I spat on it, I urinated on it, is not considered bitul? Well, that's pretty disrespectful. Amar Chizkiya, the Amar Kra, it's a pasuk. It's a pasuk. Sometimes of the Avodah Zarah get angry for a moment. They do stuff, and then they take it back, so to speak. A day passes, and they go back running to the Avodah Zarah. So it's given and it's expected, and therefore it's not considered a bitul. How do we know? Pasuk in Yeshayahu says, "V'ayaki ra'av." It's talking about when difficulties come upon people who are doing Avodah Zarah, and they disgrace their Avodah Zarah and run to Hashem. Right? V'ayaki ra'av, and they become hungry. V'yitkasef, and he gets angry. V'kilel b'malko be'elohav, and he curses his melech and his deities, his Avodah Zarah. Upana lemala, and he turns to Hashem. But right after he writes, Ve'el-eres yabit, he goes back. When things settle, he goes back to his original path and he does Avodah Zarah. So you see, the temporary tantrum that he throws is not necessarily a sign that he is acting a mature act of nullification of Avodah Zarah, but rather it's a temporary tantrum, and that's not considered a bitul of Avodah Zarah, and therefore it's not bitul. Even though he disgraced his deity and his God, and he turned to Hashem 5 minutes ago, El Eres Yabid, he's still going to go back to the Avodah Zarah, and hence that is not considered a bitul of Avodah Zarah. Now we have to deal with the sale of Avodah Zarah, which is going to take the rest of the Amud of who you sold this to. Because, for instance, the Gemara is going to suggest if you sold it to a church that they're looking for this Avodah Zarah, so everyone should agree, we could easily agree that that's not a bitul of Avodah Zarah. You found a better place for it. And everyone should also agree that if you sold it to someone that's notorious for breaking and smashing and destroying, if you sold it to Avraham Avinu, that's, of course, everyone could agree that that's bitul also. So what exactly is the case of the machloket Rebbe and Chachamim, that it's a questionable thing when you sell it to someone is going to be considered a bitul or not, is something that we will discuss and clarify in the next shiur. Hazaku Baruch.